Welcome to the latest Paddock Pass podcast. This is our review show from the Grand Prix of Germany at the Sachsenring. We are still inside the media centre. Dave, do we have a bin handy?
We do have a bin handy, a very
Excellent.
nice metallic number.
There we go. The YouTube duties are fulfilled, so that's probably the nicest bin we've had yet.
It is a classy bin.
There's not even any flies kind of hovering above
No,
it.
exactly.
Yeah, never any flies on Dave. We know that. So when he's in charge of the bins, even less so. What a Grand Prix. I say that in a way not of all-out excitement, but more because it was more of a strategic, carefully considered affair, and considering the 3 days, the bizarre swirl of weather conditions that we've had, it definitely gave us enough to talk about, right, Dave?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it was, my wife was here because today's our 25th wedding anniversary, so she got to celebrate it watching a race, the lucky girl. But she said she thought it was an exciting race. She enjoyed it. And I think it was a strategic race. It was that bit of chess that came to it. There was a lot happening, and a lot happened towards the end. So yeah, it was worth it.
Neil, how was your energy? Because we've been talking on the Paddock Note shows in the last couple of days, and Moto E has tested your deep reserves. And how did you get on today?
Yeah, I thought we had a rule that was that forbade any of us saying the word Moto E again until Austria had. But I'm a good deal more enthusiastic than I was this time of day ago. Anyone that was listening to our Paddock Notes show yesterday may have noted that I was a touch grouchy and at the end of my wits. But we had 3 really good races today, and I'm back on a high, enjoying life.
He was a touch grouchy yesterday, Dave.
Just for
maybe
a
an
change.
Understatement, perhaps.
Yeah, exactly. I think there were 1 or 2 people who were lucky they didn't get punched.
Right.
You
as
being
ever,
one of them.
Well, that's normal. That's standard, isn't it?
As ever on the Paddock Plus podcast, we're really thankful to Rental Street. If you need an accessory for your street bike, then head to the website. They've got loads on offer, high quality products. Just have a look at rental.com to have a picking. Also KTM, fantastic street bikes, dirt bikes, pretty much everything you want, even a crossbow if you want a track performance car. And then also Fly Racing, celebrating their 25th anniversary this year. If you're in the market for a new off-road helmet, or perhaps you like to go adventure touring, or you ride a GS like Dave and you want to wear some goggles or not quite a full-face unit, then the Fly Formula S helmet is fantastic. Really good ventilation, really comfortable, looks great, and also highly advanced technology inside as well. So thank you to those guys for allowing us to be here together in Germany and helping towards making the outrageous expenses to get to these MotoGP events slightly easier. Although, Neil, we lucked out with our hotel because this was a prime example of an event where using the provisional calendar to book a hotel early actually paid off for once.
Exactly. Insider info.
Yes.
Yeah.
And speaking of which, there's more rumors going on about the possible replacement for Kazakhstan because we moved from Qatar to Misano doubleheader. Now there's even talk about kind another venue in Spain. It could be Aragon, Jerez, Valencia being talked about as well. I guess the kind of least east or west you go is going to make the whole trek to Indonesia slightly more functional.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest problem is the transport. We saw this we had Aragon and Motegi back-to-back last year or the year before, I can't remember, but certainly they ran into problems with getting the freight in all the time. So having a European round is going to be problematic unless they can get everything out on Sunday night.
This weekend, Neil, what's your grade for this Grand Prix?
I'm going to say it's probably 0 because I had to commentate on Moto E for about 2.5 hours yesterday, and it seemed maybe like it was 7 or 8 hours. But I jest, of course. I'm going to give it probably a strong 8.5. I thought it was a really strong GP. We had 98,000 people, I think, through the turnstiles today, if official figures are to be believed. And
very busy Saturday as well.
Really busy Saturday, yeah. Grandstands were packed right away around the track. They love the MotoGP in this part of the world, which is a good thing. And my fears are, I think, our collective fears that we had about a rather dull race proved to not be the case. I think we had great Moto3 race, superb Moto2 race, maybe almost the race of the year. And MotoGP wasn't super thrilling but there was lots going on, lots to kind of dissect, and as Dave previously mentioned, drama right up until the penultimate lap. So yeah.
Dave, what was your mark?
I am gonna give it an 8. It was a very tense, very interesting race. It was cat and mouse, and again, you really saw across all 3 classes that it came down to tyre wear. Everyone was having to manage their tyres, where we've seen other previous races, even for Moto2 and Moto3, where they've been sort of 20, 30 seconds a race faster. I think it was something like 12 and 14 seconds faster for Moto2 and Moto3. It's really a big. No, I think only 7 or 8 seconds faster. So it's a huge difference. Because you just can't go so fast, because you spend so much time on the left-hand side of the tyre. It's much more about sort of conserving it. It was extremely eventful. There was lots happening. So, yeah, I enjoyed it.
I'm tempted to give the Grand Prix a 7. And Sachsenring is such a strange place because there is a big crowd here, but sometimes, depending on where you walk around, you can't really feel it. I mean, if you go towards the Omega curve and that dip, it does seem like there's a big crowd there. There's a lot of people. But then if you stand out towards maybe like turn 13, a wonderfully uphill crank curve. I went to watch warm-up there this morning, and of course, the sensation on the TV is never quite the same as it is when you're standing there, and it is really steep. I mean, you can see the riders really attacking that area. That's in another different part of the valley, so it's all kind of different, and it looks not as busy. It's just one of the curio aspects of this Grand Prix where it doesn't quite seem how it does on TV.
Yeah, but I mean, that part of the track is right up against the road, so there's literally no room for the grandstands. There's grandstands on the outside of 13, but there's no grandstands on the inside because you're up against the road, so there's literally no place to put it. It's the same on the outside of 12. You can't put any grandstands there because that's someone else's field. That is the trouble. It is a piece of track which has been crammed into a very, very tiny little piece of ground, really, of terrain. And that turn 13 on the inside there is fantastic because when you are on the service road, you are actually close enough to be able to see the riders using the thumb brake, which is amazing.
The antithesis of Mugello in many aspects, whereas Mugello you're amazed by the speed, but here you have that proximity, and it's a different kind of appreciation of MotoGP. And I would recommend it to people who could maybe get a decent pass or get decent access to Sachsenring to travel here and at least see MotoGP once. But Dave's talking about the circuit being crammed in, Neil, and you got experience of this, I think, a couple of years ago. Maybe during the pandemic championship, you actually stayed, in accommodation where you could see part of the track. And there is the road on one side, but there's also residential housing on the other side, Dave. So it's...
You're right in the middle of an industrial estate, and there's houses and everything. Any other part of the world, this place would probably be closed down, but this is the Sachsenring, and they absolutely love a bit like Assen, really. I mean, they really love the track. It's very important to the region. It's an important part of the cultural identity of the region, and so yes, it gets tolerated for being where it is. You don't get the complaints.
I'm going to say a 7 because we didn't have the fantastic weather that we've had in some GPs recently this year, even though we had a narrow escape with the rain. I mean, Saturday bucketed down, and then even this afternoon for the Northern Talent Cup.
We didn't have a narrow escape. I had to commentate in that minute.
We did.
We did, yeah. He got it. He got it in the neck. Yeah.
We were watching these images of the rain pelting down, saying Moto E delayed, and Dave and I were kind of looking, thinking,
cackling.
Poor Neil. Actually, we had sympathy for you, mate.
Yeah,
so,
I did Silverstone 2018 from pit lane, so I had a great deal of sympathy for you.
Yeah, Simon Criffar said to me today, I would have felt pity for you, but I did Silverstone 2018, so...
Well, listen, talking about memories, Neil, what was the moment of the Grand Prix for you?
You go first with this.
I go first?
Yeah.
Goodness, right. If you're throwing it back on me, I mean, for me, just the crash from Maverick Vinales stands out on Saturday. Not only did it kind of perhaps erode some of his competitiveness when we thought, he could be the one to really break the Ducati monopoly at this place. And, it was a heavy, heavy high side. He was talking about it again today. He said he actually didn't feel physically that bad. He was worried that he had broken or he'd done some damage to a hip that he had broken previously yesterday. Those checks turned out to be positive in that there was nothing broken. But then Yeah, he was just talking about it. He almost had the same high side off throttle today. He said it was a big scare, almost sent him flying. And I just thought it was dramatic, it was spectacular. Of course, the narrative around Marc Marquez's accident is probably a little bit heavier, but in the end, he came back to achieve something. But yeah, it was a shame because I felt, aside from Miguel Oliveira, Maverick was the only guy that could really get in and rustle the Desmos Adichis. But now is it your turn? Oh, okay.
You mentioned Marc Marquez. My moment was Marc Marquez because that was a huge crash at turn 11, a proper high side. I mean, it's bad enough crashing there normally. What you want to do is just let the bike go and try not to tumble through the gravel too much. It always hurts, but you don't want it to hurt too much. What happened to Marc Marquez was that he tried to save it. He almost saved it. He had it on his knee. The rear dug in, and then it bucked and spat him off. That was and it was a big high side. Ended up with a massively broke a finger. Ended up with big bruises on his ribs. Bruised ribs are an absolute pain when you are trying to breathe. It's especially when you're exerting. When you're trying to expand you hate laughing or coughing when you've bruised your ribs. Never mind trying to do 30 laps around the Sachsenring. It definitely had a big impact. We only found out yesterday why he tried to save it, because they had sort of various technical problems with the bike. He knew he only had one bike that was working, and he thought, if I can save it, like if it had just let it crash, the bike would have been destroyed. Couldn't have gone back out and would have lost the entire sort of practice, and that would have been a big problem for us. I thought, if I can save it, then I can sort of stay on. We can go back in and get on with the rest of practice. But he couldn't save it. It's a very, very difficult and dangerous place up at turn 11. As Colin Vire found out as he was trying to as he was trying to dominate the Moto3 race today, crashing out of the lead, which was not big or clever. But I think that what we saw Mark do, first of all, in the sprint race, coming back from 13th to 16th to 6th during the sprint race, and then 13th to 2nd in the main race, that I think tells you just how good he would have been, how much potential he would have been. We could have seen his first win since when was it? Misano 2021. Yeah, there you go. We could have, nearly 1,000 days.
Do you really think that moment eclipsed, a win, Dave? Do you think if Mark had qualified well?
Yes.
So if he just needs to be further up on the grid, and he would have been.
He needs to be fit. He needs to be starting from the front two rows, and he would have won. Well,
I guess his brother showed that GP23 is competitive. Could have run with.
Yeah, 100%.
But maybe they're not, because the two standout riders were on GP24s. And I guess that leads you to your moment, Neil.
It does, yeah. I mean, my moment was a moment right at the end of the MotoGP race, a pivotal one as well. You would have to say maybe one of those moments that you look back at the end of a championship, because the championship leader coming into this round crashed out when he had done everything pretty much perfectly throughout the weekend, pole position, faultless in the sprint race, and had pretty much got his tactics absolutely spot on as well in this race. Jorge Martin entered turn 1, I think, for the penultimate time, lap 29 of 30, and decked it, lost the front, and suddenly he's looking at a 10-point deficit in the championship. It allowed Pecco Bagnaia to score his 4th win of the season, and raises some serious questions about his viability to be champion this year, because you can't make as many sort of mistakes as he's had this year, and it was a big blunder.
My first reaction was disbelief, Dave, when I saw Martin go down, and then it's obviously not the first crash we see at turn 1. And if you ask some of the riders there, they're explaining how the corner is difficult because it's dropping away, but there's like a hump or a rise into the braking zone. And Maverick Vinales was explaining that if you get slightly on the throttle, then it kind of unloads the front, and that means it's even more skittish, and you have a propensity to crash like he did on Saturday. And, Jorge Martin in his debrief was, I thought, very stoic, very honest as well. He said these are mistakes that he's made in the past. He's thrown away race wins, and he doesn't really know why. He said it's something that he has to work on.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, maybe you have to give credit to Martin because, where was it, Jerez? He crashed out of the lead there, down at Danny Pedrosa corner. And he was like, hey, the data shows I've done absolutely nothing wrong. It was exactly the same amount of brake pressure and lean angle going into the turn, the same speed, and different result. Whereas here, I think he was a bit more open, a bit more honest about his own feelings. He said he hadn't checked the data just yet. He said he needed to kind of cool down and cool off for a few days before he started to do that. But he did acknowledge the fact that this has happened now 3 times to him this year when he's been in good positions. Jerez, obviously the Mugello Sprint, and here. And he was like, I don't know if it's something I'm doing in terms of technique, or I don't know if it's something mental, but it's something I need to acknowledge and to address. And he said, not the worst situation in the world. It's not like this was 2 races from the end of the championship. There's still a whole long way to go, and he's still not out of it in the championship by any stretch. So not a write-off, but it is something that needs addressing. And
10 points. I mean, there's 10 points in it, and there's 407 points left.
Yeah, but do you not think it's concerning that he's thrown away a victory in a weekend when he's been so imperious?
I mean, Neil picked it at his moment, Dave, but for me, it's one of the big talking points of the Grand Prix. The championship we'll talk about in a moment, but just in isolation, there's the fact that there's no real cause for it other than the fact that he had set a phenomenal pace throughout the race. Of course, the front tyre, you asked him, I think, about the front tyre, saying, did you knacker it?
Yeah.
Even then, he was a bit like, no, I was okay. It's just a mystery why it happened. And I think, like Neil was hinting, it throws credentials on his potential to be a champion, even though he was trying to spin it by saying all great champions get to analyse why they make mistakes and it makes them better. I think this was a major, major gaffe because he could have broken the Bagnaia deadlock on MotoGP.
Yeah, Pecco Bagnaia, famous for not falling off while leading races.
Well, he's done it less.
Has he done it less
this year?
This year, I think they're pretty evenly matched this year. So it's not so bad. No, I mean, Luke Marini was very interesting. He said he'd only seen it once and he'd only seen it from the helicopter shot. But he said you can see from Martin that he's going a little bit wide. He's got, or a little bit deep. He's going, he's braking a little bit later. He's braking past the braking marker they usually use. He's got his leg out a little bit further than normal, which means he's trying to stop the bike harder. And then he pitches the bike in to try to make the corner, but it's too late. It's too much. I did think, because you could see the gap was. The gap was interesting because it kept on sort of like closing and opening it, and watching it sector by sector. Martin would pull away through, for example, the first sector, where you've got turn 1, which is the right-hander, and then turn 3, the Omega curve, the big long turn. So you'd sort of like think, okay, right, he's pushing on the right-hand side of the tyre. Pecco was going through there, but yeah, Martin basically said, I'm not. I don't think I was pushing hard on the right. I just think that Pecco was struggling more on the right, but gaining more on the left. So it's it's one of those sort of swings and roundabouts things. The thing is, you do have to manage your tyre so closely, and you have to ask whether the fact that Pecco was getting closer and closer throughout was the difference.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I was going to say, Dave. I think when Pecco got past Franco Morbidelli to go second, he was 1.2 seconds back. He got the deficit down to half a second just before Martin crashed. And I asked whether that was, were you trying to respond? And he said, well, I wasn't trying to open the gap again. I was just trying to maintain it, keep it at half a second, because I thought any closer than that, and I know that he's going to be close enough to pass on the final lap, and that's exactly what I didn't want. So yeah, he was obviously, I mean, you're leading a race, you're obviously very aware of the gap behind, but Pecco was just edging closer, and you wonder whether that had it must have had an impact.
I quite liked his attitude, because on Saturday he said, I mean, he was brilliant in the sprint, but he said, with a medium tyre, I'm going to be even better. I mean, there was a real confidence there. And, when he was talking to us, and I haven't seen any of the TV interviews, but when he was sort of explaining what had gone through his mind and how the events had occurred. I just thought there was a bit of humility. There was still that little hint of arrogance that, he knew he was the best rider on the day at this circuit. And, of course, like when we talk about the championship, he's firmly in this thing. I mean, the points are minimal.
Yeah, exactly. I think he said something like, if I manage to fix this problem, then I'm going to be like super hard to beat. So it was kind of him being
defiant.
Defiant, but also he was fronting up to what was going on.
That is the attitude of a champion, where you make mistakes, and when you make a mistake, you learn from it and try to make sure you don't make it again. I think what we've seen both from Martin and Bagnaia is that they've both made this same mistake over and over and over. But I think the other thing for me was that it came at such an inopportune time for him. It was a really bad time to make that kind of mistake, because Bagnaia had been on a proper run. I think that's now 4 GPs in a row that he's won. He'd been on a proper run. Martin had come here, he'd won the sprint race convincingly. He'd taken 5 points instead of 3 because Miguel Oliveira got in between, Oliveira having a really, really strong weekend. And then he was set to get another 5 points. He would have turned like a 10-point deficit into a 20-point, or a 10-point lead into a 20-point lead, and he's turned a 10-point lead into a 10-point deficit.
Yeah, I think he just has to look at the rider he's fighting in the championship. Pecco Bagnaia went through the exact same thing this point in the championship 2 years ago, when he couldn't stop crashing out of very promising positions and managed to go away and do something which just clicked, and he was more or less pretty unstoppable in the second half of the year. And Martin probably has to go through that similar process of looking at himself in the mirror, understanding exactly what it is, and then going again in the second half of the year.
Well, in the note show yesterday, we said that this Grand Prix will come down to a duel between those two, and it proved to be so. And the championship is looking pretty much that way as well. I mean, Marc Marquez is there, but not quite. Hasn't really been in a position where, he's looked a podium guy for sure, but to be able to sort of overthrow those two, that's another step he still needs to make. So how do we feel about the championship at the moment? Because like Neil said, Sachsenring again could be a pivotal moment, because it was the time when Quartararo won his last Grand Prix in 2022, and then Bagnaia managed to reverse things, overthrow that 91-point deficit. He came back from the summer break, won at Silverstone. He said he'd worked on himself and his mental approach when he wasn't driving a car in Ibiza, and that was how he managed to engineer his first world championship. And now, we're in a situation where Jorge Martin had not comfortable, but an authoritative lead in the championship. And now he's second place, and the onus has swung towards the factory team. But I don't know, how do we sort of feel, considering the backstory of Martin also stepping out of Ducati at the end of the year? Yeah,
exactly. I think that is going to be a concern for him. Because, obviously Ducati, because he's leaving, Ducati want Bagnaia to win the championship. Not that they would refuse to give Martin parts or whatever, but they will put a little bit more effort into Bagnaia than they will into Martin. If Martin is leading the championship, then it becomes a little bit harder to not put the same effort in. But if Bagnaia is leading the championship anyway, then all of a sudden it becomes the logical thing to do. So I think he has missed an opportunity. Again, it's an inopportune moment. We're going away for a 3-week break or a 4-week break. He is going to have too much time to think about it. And he really, it felt like this, he had a chance, certainly yesterday, it felt like he was on the verge of changing the momentum in the championship. And that has not been the case. It's really it feels like not quite inexorable, or inevitable that Bagnaia is going to be a championship, but certainly Bagnaia is starting to gain the upper hand clearly. But again, 417 points still to go, only a 10-point lead.
Yeah, we're kind of, to keep talking about football, we're at the half-time stage, and, it just seems moot to be, speculating on the championship, but the riders like to tell us momentum is everything.
Yeah, there has been far too much football recently. Next, you'll be talking about golf.
Can we talk maybe about the winner a little bit? Because it was, you have to say, a pretty clinical performance from Pecco. I liked how he kind of fronted up yesterday and said Jorge was smarter than me in the sprint. He had actually used too little of his rear tire when he was trying to. Basically, I guess he was just trying to conserve his tire through the long left-handers, and acknowledged that Martin's racecraft was just a little bit better than his. But today it seemed like he did pretty much everything right. I mean, he got another really strong start, led early on. A couple of riders came past him, Martin, Morbidelli, and
well, there was one
flustered.
point where we thought he was fucked, didn't we, Dave?
Yeah.
We'd blown it.
Yeah.
Exactly. There was a moment when Martin was quite far ahead. Morbidelli was edging clear, and Pecco couldn't really keep up. And Alex Marquez, I think it was all over his rear, making moves to try and get past. And you thought, okay, Pecco's struggling here. But the reality was that he knew exactly the rhythm that he had to keep, and he was sticking to that no matter what was going on behind him or in front of him. And you have to kind of admire that sort of total, tunnel vision into how the strategy should kind of unfold. So I thought he played his race almost to perfection. You could say he got a little bit lucky, but at the same time, he was applying that pressure lid on.
Yeah, I mean, there was a decent chance that he would have won anyway, because he could have caught Martin and had a shot. But this is what Bagnaia is really good at. I mean, like the sort of ending the sprint with too much tyre and then judging it to perfection in the main race is his forte. It's something that his crew chief, I mean, we mentioned this on the No Show, Christian Gabarini has said to me several times that he gets not annoyed, but it's frustrating sometimes when Bagnaia comes back after the sprint race because he's got so much tyre left, because he's so good at saving the tyre. And a race like this, especially a place like the Sachsenring, which is really tough on tyres because you are on the left-hand side of the tyre all the time, and the right side of the tyre is very soft because you're not on it very often, so you also have to treat it with a little bit of respect. It's almost tailor-made for Bagnaia.
Yeah, don't underestimate the perfect chemistry of things coming together. A rider at supreme confidence, physically in his prime, functioning brilliantly with his crew chief, with his team, the politics of the company and the manufacturer behind him. Everything is in the perfect place, and it's something that Marc Marquez had for a number of years at Honda. Even when the bike wasn't super competitive or the best one on the grid, Marc was able to work with his environment around him to make it the most competitive motorcycle there was. So that sort of combination is something that Bagnaia has really got more than anybody else at the moment. Clearly Jorge Martin has it almost there, but there's some little kind of factor that's making him do slips like we see today. And those valuable points really could be the difference at the end of the season. Yeah, absolutely. And first ever victory at the Sachsenring as well. Another little thing to tick off on the list, the to-do list this year. This is supposed to be Marc Marquez's home. We're going to come on to Marquez, obviously, and, his crazy weekend that he had. And there was obviously reasons why Marc wasn't the victor today. But, Pecco still managed to beat him here and still managed to, overturn the championship. Yeah, I mean, Pecco is racking up a nice little run of tracks where he has won. There's fewer and fewer tracks that he hasn't won at, which... again, like, Marc Marquez was a rider who won at almost every track. They kept on adding tracks and making it harder for him. But, winning at every track or nearly every track is a sign of a really well-rounded, complete rider. And again, it just increases Pecco Bagnaia's stature. Yes, he's on the best bike, he's in the best structure, he's in the best possible position, but he is, he's beating other people on the same bike with the same opportunities. Well, speaking of complete riders, why not complete families? I mean, that was the other big thing, the Marquez brothers appearing on the podium. What was the statistic from Matt on the commentary? Matt Burt, our friend and colleague, was Imola, 97, I think? Right, exactly, yeah. When I think it was Harachica Aoki and Nobuatsu Aoki finished just behind Mick Doohan. It was Nobu first and then Harachica in Imola 97, yeah. So the first time two brothers have been on a Premier Class podium since then. Yeah, I mean... Alex Marquez had a great race. Let's not forget that. He had a good weekend. He had a really solid weekend. Yeah, let's not sing Marc's praises, even though it was a great performance in difficult circumstances, because it was not only the injury and the crash, but also a few technical problems as well. Classic maybe symptoms of a satellite team compared to, say, the ruthless efficiency of a factory team, you could say. But yeah, I mean, it was a cool landmark. I mean, to see the brothers on there, they were talking about the effect of the family. I'm sure, you know, when Julia and Mark's mother sort of had these two little kids running around riding dirt bikes, to see those two on a MotoGP World Championship podium one day. I mean, that must have been something you can never have factored in.
No, exactly. I mean, and they've had some just amazing memories together because they've shared a team, albeit very briefly. They're both world champions. They've both had podiums. Mark has always had sort of dozens and dozens of wins. So yes, there are. It's a remarkable achievement for both families, and clearly Alex is not the rider that Mark is, but he's still just a really, really good MotoGP rider.
If somebody wants to buy the Grassini team, Neil, then imagine the price has gone up a little bit.
Yep, that's a good point. Absolutely. Dave, any offers?
Well, my mother-in-law gave me €100 so we could go out for dinner. So I'll go down to Nadia Padovani later on and see if that's enough to sway her. Yeah.
Were you all walking through the paddock earlier? Did you find anyone in Grassini to talk to?
I did, yeah. I found Frankie Carcetti, Mark's crew chief, just to ask him about the crazy weekend that they had, because it was littered with incident, I think it's fair to say. I think the rhythm was there from the very first session. Mark looked really strong on a Friday, and yeah, there was just a few different things. Technical issue on the Friday, which Dave mentioned when he was talking about his moment. Then that huge crash, and he tried to save the crash because he knew his other bike wasn't working, and that obviously made it a lot worse. And then he had the injured ribs and the broken index finger on his left hand, which is another thing we have to mention as well. In real serious pain yesterday, but said he was feeling a lot better today. And I just read his comments that he made to Dorna TV. He said he took a nice little cocktail of drugs prior to the race, which managed to make the pain not really affect him on the bike. So yeah, it was. It was dramatic from start to finish. And when I spoke to Frankie before we started recovering, I said, "How are you?" And he said, "This is just the craziest weekend of my entire life." So I think he's ready for a little steiner of beer too.
Okay, cool then, Neil. Let's hear what Frankie had to say.
Well, Frankie, you just said there that this was maybe the most stressful weekend of your life. It had a pretty stunning result at the end of it. I mean, that was a remarkable performance from Mark today.
Yeah, I think from the point that, at one point Saturday we didn't even start to warm the tyres up. It was pretty much last minute. It's like, okay, maybe he could try, so we warmed them up. Then you're worried, obviously, with these, you have to heat tyres for maybe even Q2. So at that point it was like, will we go out? But saying it's not how you start, sometimes how you finish. So fortunately we turned it around.
Yeah. What were the changes that you made to give the Mark that little bit of extra feeling for today's race?
No, I think that'd be a bit unfair. We found a really good base. Already on Friday was super fast. If anything, we changed something for the morning warm-up for the issues of his ribs, and tried to make the bike a little bit more agile and everything, and turn a little bit more naturally, and that didn't go down too well. So we went back to the exact base, which he's really happy with, and I think probably said one of his best feeling was in the race. So.
I think I heard you say in the commentary just afterwards, I think Simon Crafar was speaking to you, Mark was in agony for quite a bit of the weekend after his big crash with his ribs. I mean, how did he manage it?
I think that's for him. I mean, I think as mortals, we probably wouldn't have got out of bed, but Mark's Mark, isn't he? So, like everyone's saying, it takes something like bedridden, I don't know, for him not to even try. So, there's only one of him, so.
Yeah, the Ducati riders have commented about Mark left-handed corners this year, how he just seems to have like even a little bit extra, even this early in his Ducati career. I mean, it seemed that this was kind of his track, and things were just there for him. I mean, obviously his record speaks for itself.
Yeah, I think every rider has their own, maybe not the favourite track, but the favourite track's always the one that they're super fast. I think it's quite known with everyone that he's very fast in left-handed corners, and there's quite a few of them here. So Yeah, I mean, to be fair to him, even in the rights, he's really improving a lot. So even in the race, I think he did his best sector one, which is pretty much the rights, like this, literally the second lap to go or something like that. And yeah, I think people forget it's his first year. You know, you only have to look at the history of the others in recent times. It takes a little bit of time to adapt. It's a completely different bike for him.
Also, I mean, you said anything that could go wrong did go wrong this weekend. It just seemed like one of those things where nothing kind of comes together, nothing really works in your favour.
Yeah, sometimes I mean, I've never had one like this, but usually in a session or sometimes, you know, you can have you sort of prepare a plan B and C just in case. But I think here we had to go to D and E because literally not. It was like every time you know, I think at the end it was like, we better not make a plan. Let's just go with the flow. It just happened to be like a season's worth of things that could go wrong and just sort of happen in one week. And sometimes you can't dictate what happens. It happens, and that's just how it goes.
And just finally, I mean, we've seen that the GP24s have had a little something extra in the last couple of races, but Mark was right with it here this weekend. Is this something you think you can take into the second half of the year, and Mark can maybe start regularly bringing the fight to the likes of Bagnaia and Martin, as he was doing at Jerez and Le Mans?
Yeah, I think from our point of view, I mean, whichever bike it is, you always get the best out of it, but we're our first year. What we're finding now is we've found a really good base where 2, 3, 4 races in a row we can start, and already in FP1 we're quite close. So it's, you know, it's just trying to extract everything possible. You know, it's quite logic. 24 to a 23 in some areas is going to be better, if not the engineers aren't doing their work. So, you know, the bike's capable of good things. We've just got to, you know, it's like anything. You think you've extracted the best, you've got to find something more, and that's what we're trying to work on. And yeah, I mean, like there wasn't a lot wrong with the race pace. It was just unfortunate we had to start from, you know, Dresden. I don't know, the back of the grid. Just unfortunate, but we'll just keep chipping away, try and improve every area. And you know, I think the biggest thing for Mark at the minute is the closer he can start at the front, the better chance he's got.
Absolutely. Well, thanks very much, Frankie, for joining us.
You're welcome.
Good job, Neil. Marcus's race still wasn't particularly easy, was it, Dave? Coming into turn 1 with Franco Morbidelli, and you know, he's someone we'll talk about in a moment. But yeah, he had his work cut out.
He did have his work cut out. Franco managing to. I mean, it was one of those things. It was clearly a racing incident that the two came together. That, you know, Mark ended up with a smashed screen, I think. It was Franco going wide and then trying to cut him back. Mark seeing the opportunity to dive underneath, and then getting sort of stuck where Franco was coming back. And it's one of those things. It's such a tight track with a lot of that particular section is changing direction all the time, and you have lots of intersecting lines. So it was just one of those things. But it was. For Mark to survive that and then go on to get on the podium is remarkable.
Yeah, and it seemed that almost brought the red mist down. It was like, okay, well, now I'm going to show you. Yeah. And
well, he said that, didn't he?
Yeah.
He said that was the click that he needed to go full gas 100%.
Yeah, exactly. And then he just got past Franco, and then Alex was, you know, a considerable chunk of time up ahead, and Mark was half a second faster per lap in the last couple of laps, chasing him down. He was absolutely tearing into it.
Yeah, he was as fast. He was basically as fast as Martin and Bagnaia by that time. So yeah, it was and that's why I say I think if it had had a decent start or decent starting position, a better weekend, everything had worked out, then I think there was every chance that he could have won. I think this is also one of the things that you tend to see in satellite teams because they don't have the resources to resolve technical problems as quickly as a factory team does. They don't have all of these performance engineers wandering around sort of like trying to figure out what the problem is. So this again is why he wants to be in a factory team to be able to resolve these sort of issues faster.
Neil, would you rank that performance up there as one of the best of the season? Maybe, starting from mid-grid in Le Mans was also pretty good. Home podium in Catalonia as well. But, yeah, like we say, it was a comeback. It ended up being P2. It should have perhaps been P3. But still a podium finish, considering the circumstances, was just typical Marquez.
Yeah, I think you have to, just considering his weekend as a whole and how dramatic it was. I mean, he was speaking just before we started recording, saying how he woke up this morning and felt so much better than yesterday. But he still had a massive, massive prang on the Friday. Frankie, I think, said, most of us would still be in bed after that sort of spill. And for him to be putting in a performance like that is pretty remarkable. So, yeah, I think it was definitely... It was as impressive for sure as his comebacks in Le Mans and Barcelona when he was starting 13th as well. So it was pretty sensational.
If this was a stolen victory, if you like, if Mark missed out on victory here, when are we going to see him win a race? Because it's coming. He's going to be winning a race soon.
Aragon.
Yeah.
Aragon's resurfaced, which might make things a little bit more capable. So there's going to be a lot of grip. I think Austria.
Did you not see how Franco Morbidelli's GP24 was gapping him coming out of the final turn? I mean, but I think that was really interesting. That because we went on board with Mark, I think at one point when he was trying to pass Mount Morbidelli, and coming out of the final turn, you could just see the sort of difference on the straight. The GP24 was easing clear at a kind of alarming rate of knots.
Yeah, but I think Austria, because I remember Mark fighting with Dovi on the Ducati, where the Ducati clearly had the better acceleration, and yet Mark still found a way on an inferior Honda to beat him. So I feel in my guts that it's going to be Austria.
Before we get on to winners and losers, just a couple of other things to tidy up. The Japanese championship, I mean, there wasn't a great deal of shift there. I mean, Luca Marini actually managed to score a point.
He did after Augusto Fernandez got disqualified for tyre pressures.
Is that the first? He didn't get disqualified. I think
16 points. He got a 16-point penalty. Second race in a row that that we've had tyre penalties because Augusto Fernandez, Stefan Bradl, and Johan Zarco all getting them. I think also in part because of the cooler temperatures today. Yesterday was quite warm. Today, I think track temperatures were 8-9 degrees lower. That made a big difference. So, and it's just one of those things we have to live with until we can get a different front tyre or we can get rid of the bloody aero.
The manufacturer struggling most with the tyres, you could say, is KTM. Pedro Acosta finishing in 7th. Brad Binder was going to take that position, but then had a moment, a bit of locking into the waterfall, turn 11, lost 2 positions running off the track. He said, he'd rather take that 2-position loss than a trip to the hospital just before the summer break.
It was funny because that exact point was put to Luca Marini about the KTM riders complaining about a lack of grip, and he said, "Ha! They should have our bike." So yes, this is an issue.
But the last thing is Aprilia. I mean, we saw them particularly strong, as we mentioned with Maverick earlier on in the program, and of course. Miguel Oliveira, after his fantastic ride yesterday, where he said he didn't put a single wheel or braking marker out of place for the sprint, that kind of challenge just evaporated today. Was there a reason behind that, Dave, that we know?
No, he didn't quite have the. He didn't quite have the setup. He was having. I think he was having a little bit of a problem with grip. He just didn't have the grip that he needed to last the entire race, and so he went backwards a little bit.
It's worse for Raul.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, Raul had a bigger issue. The first, like Saturday, he had problems with the front tyre pressure going up. He had a little bit of an issue this time. The 2024 Aprilia turns better than the 2023. This is, again, something that Luca Marini was saying about the aero. The aero on the Honda is much better, but the one thing that they haven't sorted out yet is the ground effect, which is helping the bike turn. And you can see that in the difference between the 23 Aprilia and the 24 Aprilia, and also to an extent the GP23, Ducati GP23 and 24. The newer bikes just turn better because they are using the aerodynamic effect better to get the thing to turn.
How's Raul worked out for your fantasy team this weekend, Dave?
Not as well as I had hoped, but then again, I also had Jorge Martin in my fantasy team, who did me a real solid yesterday and was solid waste today by crashing out. So it was, shall we say, a bit of a mixed bag. I did speak to Wilco Zeelenberg. I went and had a chat with him because I was trying to get some information out about what his riders, what riders might be with him next year. And he did say, he said a few interesting things. One of the things he said was, it's going to be our weekend. We had a really strong weekend, and that has made us a much more attractive proposition, and more people are interested in him. He also said Miguel had a really good weekend, and that's made him attractive to other manufacturers as well, because obviously he's being linked to Pramac Yamaha. When I sort of tried to press him on who, because we think that Raul, or it looks like Raul will be staying. There'll probably be an announcement soon. That second seat, it could be all sorts of people. All he would say is, everybody is speaking to everybody, which is not that useful.
Code for bugger off.
Yeah, exactly. I did try and push him on Joe Roberts. He didn't seem particularly enthusiastic about Joe Roberts. I think what they want to do is be more competitive. So they're looking for a rider who can be more competitive than Joe. They don't want to bring a rookie through and have to suffer a year of sort of mediocre results while he gets the hang of the bike.
Between Aprilia and Trackhouse, I think they're pretty set on Raul Fernandez, which means if you do bring someone like Joe Roberts in, then you're putting the team into a position that they don't want to have, which is being like a junior kind of backup to the factory team. I mean, the factory team had Alessio Spargaro and Maverick Vinales, two very established and proven names in MotoGP, and I think Trackhouse want to have at least one big hitter if they see Raul as a project that's still very much blossoming or whatever, or still things to go. So if I had to put some money on it, I would say it's probably someone like Jack Miller.
That's the other thing. You have to look at who's going to be available, and the people who are available. The possible success stories would be Jack Miller. Keeping Miguel if Miguel can do this. But again, the trouble with Miguel is he's been sort of outside the top 10, and then all of a sudden he's right up there and on the podium, on a sprint podium,
which is what happened at KTM.
Yeah.
And, I just think Miguel's also being wooed by a factory ride at Yamaha. Yeah. And that probably will pull him a little bit more in that direction. But
Exactly. Yes, exactly. So it's a tricky one.
Did Fabio Quartararo name another rider that he would love to be on the Pramac Yamaha today, Dave? Just curious, because it was...
it's been through the list.
It was Di Gianantonio on Thursday, then it was Miguel Oliveira yesterday. My best mate, I love this guy. Yeah, put him on the bike. I'm just curious, was it, I don't know, Jack Miller today?
He didn't mention any more names, but I'm not sure. I think he was asked a lot of questions, but none of them about more possible companions.
Well, in the notes show yesterday, he said Dave would be in the running.
Well, I mean, I've seen him get his knee down the GS, so...
and his shoulder. Elbow, shoulder, head.
Ass.
Usually because I've forgotten to take me disc lock off.
Before we move on to winners and losers, I don't know, people might have seen today was also the British Grand Prix at Silverstone, and another British Grand Prix will be coming up in the first weekend of August when MotoGP gets going again after the summer break.
The good British
real one.
Yeah, and those lovely people at Silverstone have given us 3 pairs of tickets to give away on the podcast with, I think it's some concept called roving grandstand access, which means you can move around and sit in different seats around the circuit. And also they're saying they're hoping to stump up some goodies as well, perhaps maybe some paddock access or some other treats. So we've got 3 pairs of tickets to give away on the podcast. All you have to do, guys, is sign up to be a Paddock Insider. By joining us, you're going to get all that lovely content anyway, and the price of being a Paddock Insider, like 120 euros for the full year.
It's less than that. It's less than it's 110, I think, because it's $10 a month. But if you sign up for a year, you get a discount.
And this is on Patreon, of course, patreon.com/Paddock Pass Podcast.
Yeah, and the point is, not only do you get all the lovely extra podcast content, but then a chance to win these tickets. And we don't have thousands of people on our Patreon channel, so the chances that you win are actually pretty decent.
Yeah.
And you know that the cost of the ticket to get into Silverstone anyway, you would assume is going to be, I can't tell you off the top of my head.
It's going to be more than a. It's probably going to be more than a year's Paddock Pass podcast Patreon.
Exactly. So what we're going to do, we're going to pump this competition for the next few weeks leading up to Silverstone, and then we're going to pull 2 names out of the hat from people that have signed up to be a Paddock Insider. That includes our current Patreons as well. So
who we've had a lovely time with chatting on Discord.
Yeah, absolutely. Another benefit, if you sign up, you get to join the community, ask us questions. We try to post some weird pictures of ourselves as well during the weekend. And
not weird. That makes it sound
weird.
Weird.
Or unusual.
Too late for that.
Unusual or funny. So there we go. So thank you to Silverstone. We'll be promoting that competition up until the race, of course, which is only, 3.5 weeks away. And it's going to be an extra special one because there will be a 75th anniversary presentation going on as well.
Yeah, and everyone, I think, is in special liveries. Is the room?
MotoGP grid.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, costumes. There's all sorts of shenanigans going on.
Let's see what can actually be organised in that time. Let's move on to our winners and losers section of the show. Dave, you go first. Who is your winner?
My winner is they're more than one winner. They include Claudio Domenicali and Mauro Gracili and also Gigi Dall'Igna, basically Ducati senior management. Because
did you go there for lunch?
I did not go there for lunch. I haven't been invited since they lost their tobacco sponsor, unfortunately. But they did. It worked out perfectly for them. They got rid of their thorn in the side, who is winning on a satellite bike. He is now second in the championship. Their chosen boy had a fantastic race, comes away leading the championship, comes away with another win, making it 4 in a row. The momentum has swung back into the favour of the factory. Their choice is validated again. Marc Marquez finishes second, validating their choice of Marquez over anyone else. You know, he beats Enea Bastianini. Bastianini had a good race, but he the typical Bastianini sort of qualifies in the wrong place. It takes 15 laps to get going, and all of a sudden he's really, really motoring, by which time he's sort of stuck. So yeah, I mean, this absolutely validated the choices they made at Mugello for the future.
Yeah, another race weekend when they were just totally dominant. Occupied all top 5 places in the MotoGP race. It should have been the top 6 with Martin there before the crash.
Even Marco Bezzecchi was happy.
Yeah, although he said he was happy, but his face didn't indicate that he was that happy. But yeah, at this moment it just seems difficult to see KTM and Aprilia getting back on an even footing with Ducati this year. Yeah.
I'd say the year is looking... Well, I mean, we still have the break. We still have one more test, which, Honda are treading water. Jeremy was telling us on Saturday and Friday, we were just riding around. I mean, they're trying to collect as much data as they can. You'd have to imagine that their patience is being fettered probably by the knowledge that something is coming. It's Ducati, like you say, Neil, this is a different class.
That was very much the impression we were getting from the Honda riders. Is there's big updates coming, but they're probably not going to come from Misano until the second half. The obvious, what you would hope for is Silverstone. I don't think it'll be Silverstone. The obvious thing to do would be to bring them to the Misano test, race them during the weekend, and then do a proper test on the Monday to develop them, get them ready for the flyaways.
So it's not true that for the 70th anniversary at Silverstone, they're actually going to wheel out the old Hondas and hope they go any better.
The old NR500 with the oval pistons. Yeah, that would be great.
Oh, we shouldn't mock the afflicted, temporarily. So be it.
You do it to me enough. Why change the habit of a lifetime?
Yeah, okay, yeah. I'll check my cruelty. My winner was very easy. I'm going to say Pecco, purely for the fact that he achieved another milestone. I think he superseded Casey Stoner as Ducati's wingest rider. A mean feat. Everything's going really well for him. And for the more romantic among us, he's also getting married in the summer break. So there, some of the cynical people might say, well, that's hardly a positive thing that he's tying a knot. But You know, Dave, you've been 25 years in the hot seat.
No,
and,
I can. No, I mean, you know, find the right woman who's prepared to put up with your idiocy, and it can all work out very well.
And my lovely wife as well was sending me some birthday wishes. So yes. Anyway, Pecco was my winner. Neil, yours?
Well, I think Miguel Oliveira was a decent shot. He had a great sprint. He had a great qualifying. 6th place was a good performance. Got to go with Franco Morbidelli just because it was the first time we had actually seen him up there fighting for victory, really. I think there was a moment in the Argentine sprint last year where he was fighting for victory with Yamaha. But otherwise, we haven't really seen Franco in such an elevated position since the tail end of 2020. And there was a kind of naivety, I think, to some of his racecraft early on when he passed Pecco and then was chasing after Martin. Got a little bit too excited. He said this is just down to a lack of experience. The first time he's up there in those positions in quite some time.
It was like a dog after a tennis ball, wasn't he?
Not in the mid-pack, yeah, exactly. But when he started to go backwards, I was thinking, okay, that's it, and his race is run. But he actually managed to stabilise and find his rhythm. Really good ride from Franco, probably the best that we've seen from him since Argentina last year. Little caveat, I do think this underlines just how brilliant the GP24 is. I mean, the kind of the longer the season goes on, the clearer it's becoming that there is actually quite a big difference between the 24 and the 23 bike. And I don't want to be rude. Franco, I don't think is the best rider in the world. I don't think he's one of the best 5 or 6 riders in the world. If he's able to do that kind of performance, it shows you just how well the bike is working. Still, though, he had a great race, and it was good to see him back up there.
I was going to say Luca Marini for scoring a point finally after 9 GPs on the...
you already had your winner, mate.
Well, hold your horses there. Before we move on to the loser section of the show, and it's quite appropriate at this point that we talk about the Alpine Stars Paddock Pass Podcast Fantasy League. Of course, supported by our fantastic friends. They are people that we did have lunch with this weekend, Dave. You know, Alpine Stars. They have a fantastic range of airbags. You wear one yourself. So we thoroughly recommend any...
Big fan of the airbag.
Yeah, any riders on the road looking for some extra protection, then check out the Alpine Stars collection of airbags, because there is different ones for different purposes. Whether you want it for a track day or you actually want to wear something on your commute on a scooter, there are different models.
And can I just rescind my comments from yesterday's note show when I was shouting at Dorna because their fantasy website went down, I think, the half hour before the cutoff was due, which meant I couldn't make many changes to this weekend. Can I just actually return or rescind that comment and actually praise Dorna to the high heavens, because I was going to sub out Marc Marquez for Jorge Martin. Didn't happen. I kept Marquez in, and wow, I've climbed. I think, in the 900s about 2 races ago. I'm now in the 600s.
No.
Yeah, I was being accused of hacking in and doing them and preventing everyone from logging in and doing it on purpose to maintain my lead because I got my changes in early. But quite obviously, it can't. I think this proves that I didn't, because it really came back to bite me in the arse.
Well, I was banging the table in frustration like Neil, thinking David hacked me out because I couldn't change my team, and I was stuck with Digia, who was somewhat walking wounded and didn't really excel in the race today. Pedro Acosta, okay, he got up to 7th. Pecco, thank goodness, got me some points. And then Maverick Vinales, who also sent himself, partially to Silverstone, on Saturday.
Yeah, and one of our patrons in the Discord posted that he'd got lumbered with Pecco Bagnaia and Marc Marquez as his gold riders, which, the poor thing, having to do that, how terrible for them.
Anyway, so the loser theme, I'm still think I'm very much at the rear. And you say you're in the 600s now, Neil.
Yeah.
I cannot believe that. And Dave was hovering at 62 on Saturday.
Yeah, I think I've dropped to. I might even have dropped out into the hundreds or something. Yeah.
I checked.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Well, I'm just really happy that Steve's still playing, because that means there's someone as crap as me this year. So keep going, Steve. You and I, brothers in misery. My loser for the day, I'm just going to say, oh goodness, who do I pick? I'm going to say Augusto Fernandez, purely because he was on point for a point or two, and then of course getting the tyre pressure penalty, which becoming a little bit more frequent, worryingly so. Augusto's been struggling for feeling, for direction, for setup all the season. They've actually made some steps, so he's got a little bit more front feeling, but nobody's really talking about him with any of the team places for 2025 as well, and it's looking like he's in a real sticky place of his career at the moment. So I just, would like to something could swing his way. But I think this first half of the season's been torrid for him.
It has been just quite dismal for him, really.
Your loser, Dave?
Well, my loser is very much in the same theme. And this is a bit harsh, really, but my loser is KTM, because at the start of the season, KTM really looked like they made a step. They looked like they were, going to be capable of taking the battle to taking the fight to Ducati, and they've just sort of stood still. They've stagnated. I think Brad or Jack was. I think Jack was saying, they haven't really had any major updates. They're still stuck with the same with the same package.
That was Brad.
Yeah, exactly. They haven't really gotten anywhere. They haven't really made any improvements. They haven't found the little bit extra that they really need. They're okay with top speed, but they need a bit more turning, a bit more braking. They need a bit more drive. So yes, they need to go away over July. Take a look at the entire package and find a little bit more performance to catch up, because the bike seems to have a lot of potential. You're seeing the same with Pedro Acosta, who started off brilliantly at the start of the season, but has really just sort of like stood still while a tidal wave of Ducatis have gone past him.
Neil, who was your John Wick victim of the weekend?
I'm going to say Jorge Martin. It's a very obvious answer, but you just have to think of the championship after Le Mans. He was 38 points clear of Bagnaia. He's now 10 points in arrears. That's a pretty big turnaround in just 4 rounds. And all the kind of good things that I was thinking about him, saying about him in Mugello on Sunday, Assen on Saturday and Sunday, even on his bad days, he was still racking up podiums. But with these kind of gaffes, he's not going to be winning the World Championship. So he should be going into the holidays in a fantastic frame of mind, and he's going to be, I think, a pretty miserable character for the next couple of days. So,
But if you say that if he keeps on making these gaffes, it's not as if he's going to crash out of every race until the end of the season, Neil. It is just a cab from time to time.
Still, it's worrying.
It's a very inopportune moment to be doing that, certainly.
Well, MotoGP goes into a hiatus, but we won't be on the Paddock Pass podcast. We'll try and get some special Patreon content done in the next couple of weeks. We've got some interviews, and of course, we'll have our weekly show. Is there a superbike? Yeah, Donington.
Yes, there is Donington and then Most for the next 2 weeks.
Yeah, so we've got plenty of content coming up, certainly on the superbike side with Steve and Gordo. And Gordo's memories as well, guys. If you're on Patreon, don't forget to check those out. They're great, especially people who have been watching Superbike for a substantial amount of time. That's pretty much it from us. We're going to get wrapped up here in the press room at Sachsenring. All 3 of us will be in Silverstone, so that'll be the next time that we're talking to you from the circuit. Other than that, send us some comments on Twitter with Paddock Pass Pod, or through Discord, or through Patreon.
Get your questions in on Patreon for Wednesday's show.
Yes, absolutely. And we'll be back in a few days' time. Thank you very much for listening.